scripts on gender issues and directed street plays for gender sensitization and outreach. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vani. So the nature of the lecture, we'll have about 45 minutes of our class with us. So for 20-25 minutes, our speaker will speak and will deliver the lecture. And for the last 15-20 minutes, we'll have any question answers from the students if you have. In between, if you have any questions, you can post it in the chat box so that we can maintain this virtual meeting that we are having. So once again, welcome Dr. Tauseef Fatima, and now over to you.
Thank you. Warm greetings to everyone. I take this opportunity to thank the organizers, PG Department of Sociology, my teachers, Charles ma'am, Smita ma'am, Principal ma'am, and Dr. Somil Sharma for inviting me to deliver this lecture. So before we delve into the question of gender and the process of knowledge production, it is important to understand that yearning to learn is something which is fundamental to human existence. And this innate sense which gets reflected in the innate sense of wonder, inquisitiveness, and the desire to learn. And this desire to learn brings us closer to the domain of knowledge. When we engage with the domain of knowledge, we realize that there are certain claims attached to it in terms of its value neutrality, objectivity, impartiality, and universality, and so on and so forth. Along with these claims, there do come certain contestations, challenging much of what has counted as knowledge. And these contestations are actually in form of questions. We raise certain questions such as, because we know that this knowledge has got constructed. So what will be or what is conceived as knowledge? How have we obtained this knowledge? Who is accorded the status of a knower? What will be the dynamics between the knower and the known? What can be known? These questions do play an important role in unearthing the politics of that lies within the knowledge production. And when we talk about the politics within the knowledge production, it reflects, it tells us that how certain voices, there does exist silencing or marginalization within the process of knowledge production. It was seen that feminism has critically engaged with the field of epistemology, because epistemology plays a crucial role in influencing, in shaping the criteria for truth and justification. On the one hand, we have truth and justification, the criteria for truth, and what will be constituted as valid knowledge. And on the other hand, we have the lived realities, the existential realities, people's lived experiences. And we cannot put them in separate compartments, because what is there, what is counted as evidence, as truth, has an impact on people's lived realities. And we'll be discussing it in detail, and I'll put forward, I'll give certain examples to explain this point. So what do we see? That how we know this thing, that knowledge is something which is vast and which is fragmented into various disciplines, and it is not something constant, it is dynamic, it keeps evolving, and research plays a very important role in its expansion. So we see that the idea of shaping knowledge into disciplines can be traced as far back as Greek philosophy. There does exist hierarchy within this ordering of knowledge into disciplines. And here we see that science and scientific modes of inquiry are privileged, emphasizing upon the commitment to the notion of objectivity. That is what is objectivity? It is the separation between the subject from the object of knowledge. That means putting a distance between ourselves as knowers and what we wish to know. In this backdrop, women's studies or gender studies, because there exists this debate regarding the nomenclature, so we find that it questions the ways in which knowledge was conventionally obtained with the associated, and that is why we call it as one of the unconventional disciplines, with the associated criticism that the methods, concepts, theories that are used for the construction of knowledge systems actually conceal women's lives and experiences. To rectify this situation, activists, theorists, and scholars provide information and analysis about women's lives, about the different gendered aspects of realities, so that the information that is provided can be used. In the light of the information provided, social change could be initiated and gender inequalities could be removed. There also evolved the need to develop new ways, or we can say alternative ways of doing research and constructing knowledge, which would be sensitive to women's experiences and perspectives. So I put before you certain examples, several examples to explain how women's perspectives, their concerns were silenced. Let's take the example of the definition of rape, and I'll take the definition that was there before 2013, as given in section 375 of Indian Penal Code. So what do we see? That section 375 defines rape, used to define, we can say, rape in terms of penovaginal penetration. So the penile penetration into vagina. This was the legal definition. And when we examine this body of knowledge, which is known as law, we have to explore both the content and the practice of law, because mere content in itself is not sufficient. We need to go into the interpretation, implementation of the legal provisions. And when we go to the case laws, the judicial decisions relating to rape cases, what do we see? That a number of cases were found where women had gone through extreme brutalities in terms of insertion of glass objects, insertion of iron rods, and even hands into vagina. So this did not happen for the first time in 2012 gang rape case. It was the reality, and it was a demand also to improve, to amend the definition of rape, which was put forward by people like Flavia Agnes, Ratna Kapoor, Brenda Kosman, and various other feminist legal theorists, activists, scholars. They had put forward that demand, but we all know, because the way law conceptualizes rape, it gets conceptualized in terms of penile vaginal intercourse, and we know uh, there are a number of cases where the victim had gone to the persistent vegetative state, but due to this technicality of the legal definition of rape, it did not fall into 375, and then obviously the degree of punishment, the severity of offense was not, it was put forward in some other sections of IPC, put there, and then obviously the whole purpose got defeated. So what do we see? And we know it very well that how in 2013 a significant overhauling was made in the Indian legal system. So you see, and now we know that the definition of rape, if you go, I don't know, I would suggest that you go through it, that how the purview of the definition has got widened. Okay, there are various such examples illustrating this point, that how within the process of knowledge production and its validation, not only women's but several other marginalized voices were either excluded from mainstream or silenced or put to the periphery. And we can take the another example, we can take this sexual harassment of women at workplace. What do we see? That it gained broader attention within academia when Catherine McKinnon, a feminist legal theorist in America, she her work got published in late 1970s, and she interviewed working women in United States and brought out the commonality of experiences among these working women that these working women shared. And this commonality of experiences was named as sexual harassment. And then this whole a prolonged battle was fought, and it was argued for that this there has this need was uh, to that the legal system should address it. So, and in India we know that Vishakha versus State of Rajasthan, in that case Supreme Court issued guidelines, and court stated that these guidelines would be binding till we have legislation. And this is so and it took more than 15 years. In 2013, when we had this massive change in the legal system, Indian legal system, then only we had this legislation that talked about sexual harassment of women at workplace. So we and there are a number of illustrations, illustrations to just reflect on this point, that how uh, women's perspectives, their voices, their issues, their concerns get uh, invisible within the process of knowledge production, be it the definition of work. This is also something very important, that as a citizen, uh, as a citizen, when I engage with the capitalist mode of production, when I go out in the public sphere, then how do what how work is conceptualized, the kind of unpaid work that is being done within the households, mostly by women, does it contribute to nation's economy? Do we count it when we count gross domestic product? And so these, or do we find any kind of underestimation, underenumeration, or devaluation of this particular work? So we see, because these definitions, the kind of knowledge that we have produced has a close association with the lived realities, with the existential realities. So, coming back to the hierarchy embedded within the ordering of knowledge into disciplines, science and scientific inquiry, the different modes of scientific inquiry, different theories claim to be universal and impartial. However, feminist critique emphasizes this point, that these are actually situated and partial. One such example is the way biological sciences see the reality, that is, in terms of dichotomous categories, where black is posited in opposition to white, man as opposite to woman, male to female. So in this polarization, what is problematic that the differences are emphasized, whereas similarities and overlaps are downplayed, or we can say completely ignored. And we know this very well that in reality, human lives cannot be framed in dichotomous terms, because we know, and thereby ignoring the concerns and issues of all those who do not fit in this binary construction of identities. And this becomes one of the reasons why people, why transgender persons with queer identities, they go through a lot of exploitation, subordination in the society, and the way the institutions within the society, be it media or other such platforms, other such modes, the way they represent their issues, their concerns. In medical sciences also, uh, it is seen that during, and this is something which is very interesting, that during childbirth, birthing woman is rendered passive by obstetricians, by gynecologists, where she is made to lie down to deliver the baby. This is known as this lithotomy position, denying women agency during the process of childbirth that they used to possess earlier. Because earlier women used to give birth in squatting position or other enabling positions, so that they could use their physical strength and the gravity of the earth, and then physically push the baby out. And whereas when they lie down, the lithotomy position makes active pushing far more difficult. Apart from this, in all other procedures adopted by medical science, both during pregnancy and childbirth, the pregnant woman is treated just as a body to be acted upon by someone, by who is the all-knowing person, doctor, obstetrician, thereby discrediting and ignoring the knowledge possessed by elderly women specifically in many cultures. And these knowledges relate to the knowledge about their bodies, pregnancy, childbirth, healing procedures, etc. And this is also one such thing which we find in the indigenous, because we are talking about the indigenous knowledges. So we should be knowing that how traditional knowledge systems and this entire discourse on intellectual property rights and patenting, it has this, it reflects, it reveals this possibility of misappropriation of traditional knowledges possessed by women, and specifically women belonging to third world. So what do we see here when we bring the question of gender to the process of knowledge production? It is found that knowledge is not abstract or neutral, be it science, social science, law, or any other category, because we had discussed that how there lies an ordering of knowledge into disciplines, and Aristotle has dealt with it in detail, that how this hierarchy is based on the kind of usefulness that is associated with specific disciplines, on the usefulness that's associated with disciplines. So what do we see here? That knowledge is grounded, it is not neutral. It is, because it is, and these examples, these illustrations put it very clearly, that it is grounded in lived realities. It is grounded in the experiences. It is something which is local, which is fragmented. In all the societies there exist, we know this very well, that relations of oppression are always, or are there. The degree may vary, but it cannot be denied that it might exist in subtle forms, might not be, the oppression might not be apparent, but it exists. So within these unequal relations or the relations of oppression, the oppressed, because when we are talking about the relations of oppression, the oppressor and the oppressed. So oppressed have a clearer, less biased understanding of social realities. Why so? Because they are the ones who are less likely to be benefited by the continued existence of the relations of oppression, or we can say there exists this possibility, very less possibility for them to be benefited by the status quo. So and thereby that is why they bring critical insight of social structures and social relations. And obviously when we talk about the oppressed, it is not something which is homogeneous. Their identities are heterogeneous, and so we do have varying standpoints, and these varying standpoints play a crucial role in formation of inclusive knowledge systems, and thus representing the voices of different segments, all the segments, we can say all the segments of the society. In this reconceptualization or challenging the knowledge systems, we need to pay attention to the power dynamics that play an important role in knowledge production, because we know this, that how theorists like Michel Foucault have argued for this idea that how knowledge, power, and discourse mutually constitute each other. So the deconstruction of I hope I'm audible. Yes. So am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible. Yes, ma'am. Sorry for the interruption. Thank you. So the deconstruction of the existing knowledge systems help us identify the presence and absence. This is something which is very interesting. What is present, what is put there in dominant positions, and what is made absent in a better manner. Thank you. So I hope I've not exceeded the time limit.
That's okay, you can conclude.
Thank you. Now I make it open for the viewpoints, for question answers. If you have queries, or if you have your, what do you think on it? How do you see? Because it is something which is very interesting. The way we concept, the way, because we have this knowledge system, and how what the kind of politics that lies there, the power dynamics that is there, that lies within the conceptualization, within the process of construction of knowledge, is something which is very interesting. So I just wish to know, what do you think about it, or if you have questions.
Thank you so much. Now we are open for question and answers. If any of the students you have any questions, please ask them so that ma'am can answer those questions.